If you want to show that you're a modern person, down with the kids as it were, something you can do is use modern phrases and buzzwords. And one of the most popular is non-binary. In fact, I think non-binary will go on to either be more popular than or replace the term transgender, because being trans still means something, whereas non-binary is nonsensical. Aside from people born with the incredibly rare condition of being intersex, people we used to call hermaphrodites from the Greek legend of Hermes and Aphrodite having a child which was both male and female, other than those people, everyone else is either male or female. And there are screamy people who will argue that sex and gender aren't the same thing, but I tend to err on the side of reality. However, if I were a younger person, things might not be so clear-cut. Today's youth are bombarded with gender ideology crap on social media, and increasingly in the classroom by woke teachers pushing their twisted agendas onto impressionable young minds. And online there are a number of quizzes, often with very loaded titles such as "Are you gender non-binary?" So at the weekend I took a number of them, and finally I could find out who I really am. All of the quizzes, they are much of a muchness, a series of very vague questions, most of which have more to do with personality traits rather than gender. But of course that's where gender ideology stems from, because in the past, if we pick some stereotypes, say we have a teenage lad, he's very camp, he has an interest in musical theatre and shows that he's more into boys than girls. So in the past we would have said that lad is probably gay. But under gender ideology we would now say, actually, he's probably a woman trapped in a man's body. Let's get him brainwashed in therapy, smash him full of hormones and arrange to have his dick cut off. Many of the questions don't even appear to have anything to do with gender. Now, if I were a cynic, which I am, I'd say they have more to do with targeted advertising, because I cannot comprehend how me preferring coffee to tea affects my gender. But I do know since I answered that question, I'm seeing a shitload of adverts for coffee machines. Something important is I answered all of the questions as honestly as possible. However, because of the way the questions are worded, the way I've answered doesn't necessarily steer my answer in the way I suspect the question wants me to go. For example, there's a question which asked, do you like makeup and dresses? To which I replied, yes. Because crucially, that question isn't, do you wear makeup and dresses? It's, do you like them? And yes, I like to see makeup and dresses on women. The next question then asked, how do you feel about wearing a suit? Well, I like to wear a suit because I like to look smart. But how do I feel about it? I don't have that much of an emotional commitment. Another question which was open to interpretation was, where in the world would you most like to live? And luckily, one of the options was the UK. Because being British and living in the United Kingdom is really practical for me. Most of the people I know and everything I own is in this country. And yes, I'd like to visit Japan, but I don't think I'd like to live there. Because I don't speak the lingo, and that would be a hell of a commute to work every morning. A couple of other questions were, have you ever pretended to be the opposite gender whilst online? Let's be honest, who fucking hasn't? And then a question which said, do you feel angry if you visit somewhere with a lack of gender-neutral bathrooms? And I have to say no. It cheers me up when there aren't gender-neutral bathrooms, because we know the presence of those bathrooms increases the chances of women and girls being indecently or sexually assaulted, to the point that many places which had neutral bathrooms are now going back to single-sex spaces. And I know there are people who will scream and cry and say, what about gender non-binary and trans people? Well, most establishments have a disabled toilet. I would urge they use that one. Because if I were insisting that I am a woman and I need to use the women's toilets, clearly there'd be something fucking wrong with me. But there was one question which for me exposed the utter farce that this subject is. It asked, who knows you best? And one of the options was my boyfriend/girlfriend. Boyfriend or girlfriend, not my gender neutral, gender fluid, non-binary, furry dragon self life partner. No, boyfriend or girlfriend, a choice of two. And when there are only two of anything, there's a word for that. Binary. There was also a question which I think had been put there just to make the person taking the quiz feel lonely and isolated, because it asked, do you feel different from everyone else? To which of course I answered, yes, because I'm an individual. None of us truly know what it's like to be someone else. The only way I know what it would be like to be someone else would be if there was another version of me existing at the same time. Two disgruntled Dannys on the face of the planet. And I don't think the Almighty would allow such a blasphemy upon his earth. The penultimate question on the first quiz I took was this: what do you think the result of this quiz is going to be? To be honest, I would have led with that. That would have saved everyone a lot of time and effort. But here's the list. Please note though, that cisgender or normal is not on that list. And that's what cisgender means. It means you're comfortable being the gender you were born as. And I don't like the term cis, because firstly, it was coined by a kraut who advocated for paedophilia. And secondly, if you hear someone saying cisgender, it'll either be a non-binary or trans person or one of their woke fucking allies who's just started losing an argument. I think the reason that cisgender isn't on there is twofold. Firstly, there's a lot of money to be made from confused teenagers who don't understand what they are. And secondly, most people taking that quiz won't want to see cisgender, because if you're cisgender, you don't score any victimhood points. Given that I'd taken 4 quizzes, it's reasonable to expect I would have the same result for each of them. I should have the same gender across all of the board. That is not the case. I got 4 different ones. Firstly, I am apparently genderqueer, meaning that I am both male and female and both and neither. I'm also non-binary, that catch-all term for any attention-seeking fucktard that doesn't understand if they're a boy or a girl. After that, I'm a demigirl, and I had to look that one up. That is someone with multiple genders, but their primary gender is female, even though the person is a biological male. So now I'm trans, and finally, trans feminine. Also someone who identifies as female, but who is biologically male, but acts in a traditional female way, including female hobbies and interests, whatever the fuck they are. We all have mannerisms and traits which could be viewed as more masculine or more feminine. That doesn't change our gender. But I wanted to see if I could actually get cisgender on any of these quizzes, so I retook one, and it is possible. But in order to be listed as cisgender, I had to use values, standards and attitudes which are so outdated and so rigid, I believe they became unpopular just after the First World War. These are attitudes along the lines of men should be the sole breadwinners, a woman's place is in the home, yeah, in the kitchen or on her back. The sort of crap which modern day incels spout. The type of people who are unaware that the suffragette movement happened. I say, old chap, have you heard? Some of the girlies want the right to vote. Oh, the daft little fillies don't understand if they tried to make a decision that important, their little brains would melt. If we go down that slippery slope, before long, they'll want to end racial segregation. Of course, I know that everything in all 4 of those quizzes was absolute crap. But then I'm a 45-year-old man. I've had a lot of years to get used to who I am. Whereas younger people today, who, like I said at the start of the video, they are bombarded with this gender ideology crap. Is it any wonder so many of today's teenagers are utterly fucked up? As ever, thanks for watching.